Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hark the Pod. This is Gwen Peace, the Assistant Sports Editor of the Daily Tar Heel, joined today by Daniel Way, the other Assistant Sports Editor, and Harry Crowther, one of our staff writers. Guys, say what's up.
Hey, Gwen. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Daniel?
Doing well.
Gwen, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm tired. I'm really tired. The 8 o'clock kickoff is not great, but it was fun.
Yeah, and so for a little bit of context, Harry and Daniel were at the football game last night covering for the DTH. How was that, guys?
I'm going to have to agree with Harry here. It was tiring, but given all the penalties like that happened in the game, the clock just wasn't flowing, and we were just that first quarter felt like an entire game in itself. So we made it, though. We turned our stories in, got enough sleep, can sleep in on Sundays.
How do you define enough?
At least 4.5.
Okay. Yeah,
hours.
I got 5, so yeah, I got enough.
Okay, let's go.
We finished pressers at what, 12:45, I think?
After midnight, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 12:45. I looked at my watch, and I finished my story around 5:30 a.m., and I texted Daniel. I didn't think he was up.
I was up.
He was up.
I was up.
So you might have noticed that Shelby, our usual host, is not here. She has unfortunately lost her voice. We went to the Travis Scott concert on Friday night, and the voice has yet to return after that experience. So I'm taking over today, but she will be back to the regular scheduled program next week. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the content of the episode. Hopefully you've noticed we are on video at this point. I think we've had 3 or 4 episodes on video.
Sounds right.
So you can check us out at Daily Tar Heel on YouTube to watch this episode or stream it wherever you get your podcasts regularly. We will also have plenty of sports coverage from this weekend in Wednesday's print paper, so make sure that you check out that in blue boxes on Wednesday morning. So we can go ahead and get into the UNC football recap. The number 12 North Carolina Tar Heels took on Miami on Saturday night. They defeated them with a final score of 41-31, marking their 5th consecutive victory over the Hurricanes. UNC had a strong third quarter, outscoring Miami 21-0 to secure the win. On the offensive side of things, key players included junior wide receiver Tez Walker, who had 6 receptions for 132 yards and 3 touchdowns, as well as sophomore running back Omarion Hampton, who had 197 yards on the ground. Daniel, like we already mentioned, you were at that game and you wrote about Tez, the transfer who played his second game as a Tar Heel on Saturday, but truly his first game fully integrated into the UNC offense. It was his first start. Head coach Mack Brown called Walker's presence a game changer. We have that audio here for you guys to listen to.
Because it's going to be hard to play him with one guy. And if you put 2 out there, that means you're going to have fewer inside for the run because a lot of people now are bringing safeties down and trying to stop the run. So you got Omarion inside, you got Drake inside. If you blitz, you're one-on-one, so you better get there. And then he also, when he draws that attention, will open up Nate and J.J. Jones more and give them opportunities as well. Really sorry that we lost Kobe Paysauer for him and for us. So thank goodness that Tez was eligible.
All right, so now that you've heard from Mack Brown, Daniel, can you explain the X's and O's of how a player like Walker, with his speed and route running ability, opens up options across the field?
Yeah, for sure. I think before the game against Miami, no one really knew, outside of the North Carolina football team, what Tez was actually capable of on the field. He's been the talk of the town up to this point with eligibility, waivers being denied, things like that. But the question remained what he could do with UNC's offense. We saw at Kent State, he caught I think 10 or 11 touchdown passes last season, but I think Saturday really showed against an impressive Miami defense that his addition to the offense really couldn't have come at a better time, especially with Kobe Paysauer out and definitely with the lower body injury, who's caught team high 3 touchdowns, tied for a team high with Tez, who caught 3 touchdowns alone on Saturday. But really at the beginning of the season, we were all wondering who's Drake going to throw the ball to. You know, Nate McCollum only had 1 catch for 8 yards. And he was supposed to be one of the deep ball threats. Obviously, we assumed that Tez wouldn't play for the entire season. But receivers getting to step up, Bryce Nesbitt, J.J. Jones, both deep ball threats. And with Tez clicking with the offense, it really opens up route running for the other receivers as well as the run game for Amari Hampton, who obviously finished with almost 200 yards, a receiving touchdown, and a rushing touchdown. So, yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, obviously Walker had a dynamic performance on the field, but off the field, he was much more soft-spoken. I know I've listened to him a couple of times at press conferences, and you have now as well. What did he have to say following the game?
So, yeah, he didn't actually say much. Mac Brown joked how, Tez Walker wouldn't really have much to say to the media. And, yeah, Tez didn't really say much, but he did say that he thought the best play of his career, the best play of the game, was when he recovered the onside kick. I think with 2 minutes to play, Miami was down 10, and they went for an onside kick, and Tez was there to recover it. I think it was all too fitting that the ball was in his hands after kind of just carrying UNC's offense, along with Ryan Hampton, obviously. But it's important to note what his teammates said about him. Drake May noticed how, even though Tez is pretty lean, he's hard to bring down. You saw on that second touchdown, I think, or was it the third one, where he broke some tackles and made it to the end zone. Defensive back Elijah Huzzy said he's glad that Tez isn't on the scout team anymore, that he's actually out there playing. And going back to Drake, he knew that in the first practice of spring, he threw a go route to Tez for a touchdown on one of the first plays. And from that point, he knew that Tez was going to cause some trouble for defenses. So, yeah, and also Tez Walker on Thursday brought other receivers and Drake to get some extra film study in. And, yeah, Drake said that's just a testament to how committed he is to the game as a player.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of shifting over to the defensive side of things, senior linebacker Cedric Gray played a significant role for the Tar Heels on Saturday in recording 10 tackles, an interception, and a fumble recovery over the span of the game. To help us break down Gray's performance, we have special guest Harry, who I already introduced. Harry's one of our star staff writers that took a huge jump, covered his first UNC football game on Saturday, absolutely killed it. So be sure to check out his sidebar online. But kind of getting into it, what stood out to you about Gray and overall the entire defense on Saturday?
I think what stood out for me, at least, and Daniel watched the game too, and he can probably talk about it as well, was Cedric just being at the right place at the right time the whole game. It looked like to us from where we were watching, he was everywhere. And I think he was. When you talk about great linebackers, and I think back to watching Luke Kuechly, it seems as though they cover so much ground.
Yeah.
They're just everywhere at all times, and they have a knack for getting to the football. And Gray just was relentless in his pursuit all night long. He read the defense really well. He had that key interception in the third quarter, which really changed the game, in my opinion. There was kind of a weird, crazy momentum shift in that third quarter when UNC recovers a fumble. Miami has a bad snap. They get the ball. UNC does around midfield. They fail to capitalize on that turnover, but they get another opportunity so quickly because on the first play of that ensuing drive, Cedric Gray's right on the hash, makes the interception, and then a couple plays later, we've talked about Tez Walker. Dude just makes it look so easy into the end zone to really put the game out of reach. It didn't feel like after that point the game was that close, even though Miami fought back in that fourth quarter. So I thought that Cedric was excellent, and it speaks to the defense as a whole. A lot of times last year, it felt like the defense just didn't play well enough to win the game. It felt like the offense was really good, but especially late, the defense just was close, and they got better as the year progressed, but they weren't good enough in the big moments. Last night was the opposite of that. They bent but didn't break, and
Amen.
And they played well enough to get the victory. And obviously Cedric was at the center of that.
Yeah, and like you touched on, the defense had some significant struggles last year, but for those who may have forgotten, just to put it in perspective, how bad really was the Tar Heel defense last season as compared to how they're performing this season?
Yeah, they weren't great. They finished last in the ACC in total defense. They were outside the top 100 in the country in total defense. If you look at their SP plus progression this year, it's an ESPN metric. It measures kind of efficiency and forward-looking predictiveness, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
And their improvement is 60 spots. They were outside the top 100 at the end of last year. This year, they're, I think, 43rd or right in that range. So that's a massive, massive jump. And when your offense is as good as it is, I think UNC has, I think, the 6th best offense this season so far, according to SP+. So if your defense can improve like it has, and your offense is still clicking, you have the chance to put together a special season, which to this point, they're 6-0. And now after kind of passing this first litmus test, a ranked matchup, a huge game, Daniel and I were talking last night, we thought it was one of the bigger games in Kenan Stadium's history. I mean, it was a massive game under the lights, new lights, amazing atmosphere. Packed crowd. Mac made a point to, and Drake after the game, to shout out the crowd. They were really impressed by that. It was just an amazing performance by the defense, and it was a testament to their progression. Because Mac said after the game, that's a game that a lot of people would expect them to lose.
Trap game?
In years past.
Trap game. Not trap game.
Not really trap, but
classic UNC meltdown type game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Over the past 2-3 years, we've kind of just all been like led to believe, I don't want to say gaslit, that's what I said last week, but led to believe that like UNC can't win like close games, or like every game's going to be close.
Especially down at halftime.
Exactly. Yeah. First time this season they trailed at halftime.
Yep.
So
I thought, going back to Cedric, he got the wind knocked out of him in that. I believe that was the first quarter, that crazy play. Talk about crazy momentum shifters. Miami is on the doorstep, and then they fumble in the end zone. I think it was Javari Ritzy who forced it somehow. Cedric didn't said after the game he didn't really know how it got out, but he saw it in the end zone. He kind of stumbled and he got hit. The wind knocked out of him. He was down, he said, wheezing. He actually said it was the worst experience he's ever had, getting the wind knocked out of him. He couldn't breathe for more than just a few seconds.
It's pretty shaken up.
Yeah, he was in distress, shall we say, and he popped right back up. I mean, I think that's just a testament to his leadership. And Drake said after the game that he told Cedric at halftime, they're going to have to drag us off this field. I mean, Drake got sacked, I think, 4 times in that first half. So they were getting hit. Miami was bringing it. Like you said, Daniel, first time trailing at half, they got right off the mat all night long. And that's their leadership. And I think Cedric has come a long way in that regard as well. Going from a kind of a quiet kid who started on special teams to now being the vocal leader of the defense. Elijah Hussey said after the game that before every drive, Cedric is there with them, motivating them, bringing them together as a group, leading them out on that field. And he definitely led by example last night with that toughness and just, again, his effort. I mean, he was everywhere. I mean, he was just relentless in his effort last night. And I think that filtered through the defense. And in that third quarter, they started to feel a little bit and started to really dominate that game after Cedric's interception. Yeah,
absolutely. And then shifting kind of into the future, UNC Football will take on UVA, the Virginia Cavaliers, next Saturday at 6:30.
On the CW network.
On the CW network.
Prime time.
Prime
Tune
time
in.
on the CW, big deal.
Virginia is 1-5 right now. No conference wins. They've struggled a little bit this season in contrast to UNC, who is now 6-0, one of the ACC's most productive teams.
Gwen, I have to ask, since Harry and I are from Charlotte, grew up in North Carolina, been following the Tar Heels for a while, but you're from Virginia. What are some of the storylines you were looking at heading into the South's oldest rivalry?
Yeah, so like I had mentioned, UVA is 1-5 this year. I've made it up to watch a game. I watched them play NC State, and I have to say, looking at that record and their only win coming from against William and Mary last week, The team is looking a little bit shaky this year. Maybe not the Virginia team that we've seen in years past. They lost Brendan Armstrong to NC State this year, so they have a new quarterback. So yeah, the storylines that I'm really going to be looking for will be more on the UNC end. I think it'll be interesting to see how productive the offense is, especially against a bit of a weaker defense than they faced definitely against Miami. It will definitely be interesting to see what Tez Walker can do, see if he continues that increased, offensive role as kind of the go-to receiver. Also, watch guys like Omarion Hampton, and even I think Drake May, who had comparatively a little bit of a shakier game against Miami as compared to like the game that he played against Syracuse. So I think it'll be interesting to look at those guys, and then obviously keep an eye on defensive performance for the Tar Heels as well. But I'm expecting it to not be as big of a challenge for them as the Hurricanes were. So just it'll be interesting to see how big of a win UNC can pull off if they do win.
If we look at precedent, though, the challenge might be not in terms of the X and O's, but in getting up for the game, right?
Yes.
We talk about trap game. These next 3 weeks, Virginia, Georgia Tech, and then Campbell, you have to take all those games seriously.
Absolutely. And I think that's a fair point. And maybe not as much UVA, but I would say definitely Georgia Tech is one that I have on my eye as a potential trap game.
Yeah, but Daniel definitely has his eye on that being a trap game.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so now that we've kind of done a brief preview of that UVA game, it's time for everybody's favorite part of the podcast, score predictions. So I'll turn it over to Daniel first. What do you think the score is going to be this weekend?
I'm going to go UNC 30. Virginia 0. All right, hear me out.
Ooh.
The penalties were awful against Miami.
They were really, really bad.
And
I think it was 14 for like 147.
Yeah.
I think it was.
So there's going to be a lot of accountability in practice. Ced Gray, Mac Brown.
Right.
They're going to get on the defense.
Right.
Those penalties can't happen again. I don't think UVA's offense is really going to produce anything. I think UNC's defense is playing its best football. So far, even though despite like the fourth quarter like meltdown against Miami, they almost had Miami come back, but like not really. Kind of.
It was one of those weird things where Miami was moving the football,
Yeah.
but it never felt close. It never felt like the game was in jeopardy.
For sure.
Well,
But at the same time, the defense wasn't playing like they did in the third quarter.
Yeah,
For sure.
and it was really that like 3-score advantage that I think UNC capitalized off of, but it will be interesting.
Yeah, and going back to, I think Drake May plays the first half, and then Connor Harrell plays the second half.
Really?
Interesting.
You think he's out after 30 minutes?
All second half.
Yes.
That's bold. That's
Interesting take.
I
say he plays the
think
third quarter.
they're thinking more about Georgia Tech.
well.
Because Georgia Tech did beat Miami.
They did.
Right.
That game was a tad wild.
Yeah,
was wild.
They did.
But a win is a win.
Right.
I'm thinking Omarion doesn't carry the ball for like a game with like he just carries the ball for like 20 carries. I think you throw Caleb Hood in there, you throw a little more British Brooks action in there.
We were talking about Caleb Hood last night. We haven't seen him that much this year.
But I think we'll see him Saturday. But yeah, I think Harry, you made a great point about the trap game. But I just don't see UVA doing much.
Oh, I don't either, but it's something to consider.
Also, kind of weird going about the crowd, but it's going to be fall break. Mac Brown said, like, we need more people here, but
I don't think there's going to be
I will be at the game covering it, but I don't think there will be many students. UNC definitely plays better when they're energized by Keenan's bright lights.
That's a little bit contradictory, no?
No, I think they're going to score less points with that.
Oh, so that's why you're only going 30?
Yeah.
Got you. What about you, Harry? What do you got?
I've got 42-10. I think the UNC offense is going to be there. I think they're going to be able to score on a 1-5 Virginia team. Based off of what we saw in the fourth quarter from the UNC defense, I think there will be opportunities for Virginia late to put up some points.
Especially if they're playing reserves.
If they're playing the second teamers at that point, it could open up a little bit. But it's another one of those games where it should be comfortable. And If it's not, then there are obviously question marks.
Something to look
Because-
at.
Something to consider.
Definitely.
Something to consider.
Because if it's in the second quarter and it's a one score game,
Mm-hmm.
if it's tied, then that becomes very, very interesting, because then you have those demons of what's happened in the past.
Right.
You have the demons of Georgia Tech.
Right.
So it would be very interesting to see how they handle that.
Right.
Drake talked about handling adversity against Miami down at the half for the first time this year.
Mm-hmm.
They did that well. It was one of those games where you had the bright lights, you had the energy of the crowd.
Right.
If it's tied in the second quarter next week on fall break, then it's be very, very interesting. I do think they get it done. I think the offense is a juggernaut. Again, 6th best in the country according to SP Plus.
Mm-hmm.
Drake and Tez were so dynamic. I think the best testament to a great wide receiver is he just makes it look so easy.
Right.
And I was kind of in awe of that first touchdown from Tez. I think Drake said it was cover 4, and so it's just a simple post route, middle of the field.
It did look flawless.
He looked like he was walking.
Yep.
Tez looked like he was walking, and
Walker.
Walker was walking.
That was funny.
That
wasn't.
was hilarious. He looked like he was walking across the middle of the field, and the defensive back couldn't keep up with him. So I think their connection is only going to get stronger out there on the field. So I think the offense is going to score enough points to win the game. But again, if it's interesting in that second quarter, then it becomes very interesting.
That's a story.
It's a story.
That's a story.
Yeah, well, I am going in a very similar vein to you guys both. I am saying 55-7. A bit more optimistic in terms of UNC scoring, just because I really think the UVA defense has been extremely ineffective so far this season. And so I think the UNC offense will really be able to break them down pretty quickly. And so I could foresee this absolutely being their highest scoring game of the season so far. I do think that UVA will be able to get at least one touchdown, especially if, like Daniel said, they start playing the reserves, which I can definitely see happening. But I think it will be a big game for UNC. So I am going with 55-7. Alrighty, guys. And now it's everybody's favorite time of the podcast, quick hits. Can I get a quick hits?
Quick hits.
Oh, am I supposed to say quick hits? Yeah. Quick hits.
Let's go.
Thank you. So in terms of men's soccer, the UNC men's soccer team fell at number 4 Wake Forest 1-0 on Saturday night in the Tar Heels' second conference loss of the season and also second loss of the season. Read Corey Davis's side to see exactly how it went down. In terms of volleyball, the UNC volleyball team won back-to-back matches this weekend, blanking both Syracuse and Boston College 3-0 on Friday and Sunday, respectively. You can check out Lucy Thomas's gamer from the weekend to learn more. For field hockey news, the number 3 UNC field hockey team knocked off number 19 Albany in a 4-3 road win, finishing its trip to New York 2-0. Check out Jennings Lynn's gamer to see what head coach Aaron Matson had to say following the win. And then finally, in women's soccer news, the number 3 UNC women's soccer team drew with Wake Forest on the road on Friday 1-1. Be sure to read Moira Martin's gamer and Noah Monroe's side to learn more about that game. And finally, it's time for shout-outs. So thank you guys so much for listening to Hark the Pod, and be sure to keep a lookout for the next episode next week on video and in audio form. And as always, this episode was brought to you by me, Gwen Peace, Daniel Way, Harry Crowther, Shelby Swanson, even though she is not here, she contributed as well. And thanks as always to our audio-visual team and Adrian Tillman for the theme music.